Thank you very much, and a very good morning to you all once again. In the beginning of the 90s, as a child, I lived in a small town near New York City. At that time, my hero was Michael Jordan, the basketball player. I also know that basketball is a very popular sport here in Latvia. I loved playing basketball, but perhaps sometimes even more, I loved wearing my Air Jordan shoes. I also loved collecting baseball and basketball cards. When looking at these cards, I mostly saw my heroes, my basketball, my baseball heroes. Some more than 25 years later, I found these cards laying somewhere in my old room back in Poland. What I saw was not only my heroes on these cards, but I also saw intellectual property everywhere. The logo of the Chicago Bulls and its name, the logo of the card manufacturers, the image of Michael Jordan and his famous number 23, the shoes, of course, he is wearing, the technology that was used in order to produce the basketball. Perhaps, of course, the reason why I saw so much intellectual property is, first of all, because I'm fascinated by the subject. Also, perhaps that because I am working in the World Intellectual Property Organization for the past 12 years. The objective of my presentation will be to point to the directions where you can find intellectual property in sports, as well as what WIPO is doing to help and how it can help eventually you and the sports, the teams, the sports manufacturers, and the many players involved in this process. The presentation will be divided into 6 main parts. Firstly, I'll say a few words about the sports industry itself. Then I'll make the connections between sports, intellectual property, and development. I'll also, of course, say a few words about WIPO. I'll also go then through the different IP rights related to sports. I'll say something about enforcement and some other issues. Let's start with a few words about the sports industry. There are many players involved. There are the organizers of the sports events, there are the sports federations, the athletes, the teams and their trainers, there's the manufacturers of sports equipment, there's the broadcasters and other media platforms, including the new technology ones, such as Google or Facebook, there are the corporate sponsors, and there are, of course, the millions of sports fans across the world. Because there are so many sectors and so many players and so many services and goods involved, it's very hard to measure the size of this game. Some estimates have been made. One of them was prepared by A.T. Kearney, which is estimating that the global sports industry is worth approximately $620 billion back in 2011. Others back in 2016 are saying that it is even 1.3 trillion. Without a doubt, this is a very big game. Also, it's also expected that this game will continue to grow with even a 7% increase in the upcoming years. This is according to a PricewaterhouseCoopers report prepared. The same report also shows the top 10 sports by growth. So here you will, of course, find sometimes, of course, controversial esports, football, basketball, mass participation sports. In addition, of course, in sports, you will have many new technologies which are bringing ways to boost and measure the performance of athletes, of players, of fans themselves, of course, as well. Also, the technologies allow better ways to interact with your teams, with the players, as well as sometimes it also creates new sports. Sports is also an important tool for development. Nelson Mandela once said, "Sports has the power to change the world." The United Nations fully understands this as well. It proclaimed April 6 as the International Day of Sports for Development and Peace, as well as it identified it as an important factor and enabler for sustainable development within the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Copyrights, brands, inventions, and designs, intellectual property in general has an important role to play both for the industry and for development. The main objective of the IP system is to stimulate innovation and creativity. IP in sports can facilitate the generation of income for sports-related issues and services. It can boost international trade. It can support business growth, entrepreneurship, and of course, in the end, job creation. It can enhance a country's reputation. And sports and IP go hand in hand in transcending national differences, fostering universal values of fair play, mutual respect and friendship, improving health and social well-being, and encouraging discipline, teamwork, and a competitive spirit. Also, for these reasons, today, on April 26, we are celebrating the Intellectual Property Day, which is organized each year on the 26th of April. This year, it focuses on IP and sports. You can also have a look on our website of WIPO, where you will find a map about the hundreds of events taking place on IP sports across the world today. What is the World Intellectual Property Organization? It is an international intergovernmental organization which is part of the United Nations family. It's based in Geneva, exists since 1967, with 192 member states currently, more than 350 accredited observers, and it also administers 26 international IP treaties. The objective of our organization, in the end, is to help governments, businesses, individuals make intellectual work for innovation and creativity. We do this through 5 main areas. Firstly, we make it easy to protect intellectual property assets globally. One of the key characteristics of the IP system is that it is territorial. So once you want to receive protection of your patent, your trademark, you must go to an IP office, register it in that office, and that IP right will be protected within the territory of that country. WIPO makes it easier to receive protection globally across many countries in the world through simple procedures, a one-time procedure which would help you, for example, receive trademark or design protection across the world. We also facilitate the making of IP laws. It's the member states of our organization that are negotiating the different new IP treaties, which are then adopted by all countries. We also support the policymakers. We prepare for them studies, economic, legal, or statistical studies, for them to make informed policy decisions. We also improve access to the IP system. We do this through improving the infrastructure and providing different technical solutions, how to access and use the IP ecosystem. And finally, we make IP work for development by organizing different trainings and seminars and activities, as well as supporting the countries for designing national IP strategies that have the objective to enhance that system, to make it more user and friendly for all the stakeholders. When thinking about intellectual property and sports in WIPO, we would mainly think about patents, trademarks, industrial designs, copyright, and of course, building respect for IP. Let's start with patents and inventions, which we know that can revolutionize sports in many ways. Like the examples given on this slide, here, these are all pictures from patent applications available in the WIPO patent scope, which show inventions that revolutionize the IP, the Olympic Games. Like, for example, the snowboard and lift provided here. I will not explain in detail what a patent is. We know that it is an exclusive right granted for an invention, and it is a powerful tool used in sports on a daily basis. It encourages technological advances, which can result in better sporting equipment that can provide athletes with means to perform better and to better measure their performance. Inventions can also help fans to be closer, of course, to their teams, to their players through interacting with different, for example, social media websites. Inventions can also help, of course, referees to be much more precise when refereeing the game. In WIPO, we provide different services for sports companies and individual inventors. First of all, we have, of course, the Patent Cooperation Treaty. It's an international treaty which can be used in order to simplify through one procedure to the receiving of patent protection across the world. And as well as we also have the Patent Scope, which is which gives free online access to 74 million patent documents and 3.6 million international patent applications. So here, for example, you will find a lot of inventions, a lot of sports-related inventions. And one of the features also of the Patent Cooperation Treaty is that it is as well constantly growing, with 350,000 patent applications in 2018, which represents a 3.9% growth. The 5 top technologies in which we have the patent applications is digital communication, computer technology, electronic machinery, apparatus energy, medical technology, and transport. All of these fields can actually be also applied within sports. And in 2018 only, there were 2,078 sports-related patent applications, which represents a 9% growth from 2017 and a 41% increase from 2014. So we can say that sport inventions are definitely on the rise. The top PCT sport-related applications between the 4 years, 2014 and 2018, come from such companies as Nike, Carston Manufacturing Corporation, Free and Innovative Properties Company, Sony Corporation. So these are very different companies that are applying for patents in sports. Now, about trademarks. Many of you perhaps know this logo, this sign, but did you know that Manchester United reported back in last year in 2018, £102 million revenue from apparel and product licensing? Brands can be extremely powerful tools and have a huge value for companies as well as teams. Here are brand values of some of the top 10 sports teams, with Dallas Cowboys from the United States football team worth almost 900 million, New York Yankees almost 700 million, Los Angeles Lakers almost 600 million. Brands can be protected, of course, by trademarks. These are exclusive rights granted to a sign that identifies a product or service on the marketplace, and they can take the form of words, figurative elements, packaging, letters, consistent numbers, slogans, and symbols. They are powerful and indispensable marketing and communications tools, and a valuable and enduring asset of a company and a team. In WIPO, we offer much support when it comes to trademark protection. Firstly, we administer the Nairobi Treaty, which provides protection of Olympic symbols against the use for commercial purposes without the authorization of the Olympic Committee, and I'm sure you'll hear about this later on in the next presentations. Secondly, we also provide services for a simplified procedure to receiving trademark protection across the world using the Madrid system. And finally, of course, we also have the Global Brands Database, which is a gateway to more than 37 million national and international collections of trademarks. Similarly, as in the PCT, we are seeing an increase in the use of the Madrid system with 61,000 applications, which represents a 6.4 growth. With the main technologies being computers and electronics, services for businesses, technological services, or clothing. WIPO recently also launched an improved artificial intelligence-powered image search technology in the global brands database, which makes it much more easier, first of all, of course, to design new trademarks, new logos, which can then be protected across the world, as well as to monitor better your trademarks in different marketplaces. What about designs? How can we protect the look and feel of this sports shoe? We can, of course, protect it through the so-called industrial designs, which protect the original, ornamental, and non-functional features of a product. And again, they have an important role and contribution to the sports industry. They improve attractiveness and commercial value, of course, of the products. And again, similarly, WIPO provides support through the Hague Agreement, which makes it easy to seek protection across the world of your industrial designs. And again, also, we have a global database with more than 10 million designs registered, which you can, of course, search through free of charge from our website. Regarding copyright and related rights in sports, we can actually speak about, of course, many issues, such as the sports artworks, fan artwork done of sports athletes or sports teams. There's, of course, the marketing, which is very copyright-based. There's the protection of sports-related applications and computer programs. There's the merchandising, or even sometimes one can consider if the choreography of some of the sports events, such as ice skating, can also be protected as a performance. But definitely one of the key issues in copyright is the issue of broadcasting rights. As an example, this table shows the revenue from the Olympic Games broadcasting rights going back even to 1968. And as you can see, consistently, this revenue is growing. The broadcasting rights can safeguard the costly investments in television sporting events. They recognize and reward the entrepreneurial efforts of broadcasting organizations. They recognize and reward the contribution to diffusion of information and culture. And again, in WIPO, we of course administer the Rome Convention for the Protection of Performance Producers, Phonograms, and Broadcasting Organizations. And here they are also protecting the broadcasting rights. And we are also currently negotiating within WIPO, within the Copyright and Related Rights Committee, a new international treaty on broadcasting, which would have eventually the objective to update the international framework to the new technologies for broadcasting organizations. Besides the existence, of course, of the rights themselves, the patents, the trademarks, the designs, without effective tools for execution of the rights, the IP ecosystem wouldn't be as well functioning as it is. There needs to exist effective tools that execute these rights. In IP and sports, there are two very common infringements that you will, of course, find. The first one being the illegal transmission and rebroadcasting of sports events. The second one being the illegal sale and production of unlicensed merchandising, equipment, or clothes. Both of these activities have a very harmful impact on the sports industry and society. For example, according to the OHIM study prepared for the study prepared by OHIM, the counterfeiting has a direct impact on 23 billion sporting goods sales and 26 billion direct impact on sportswear. There are, of course, in WIPO, in general in the world, but also including also in WIPO, there are many tools that help to execute the IP rights. One of the main international treaties that exist is the Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights. This is a treaty administered by the World Trade Organization, which provides also the different means that IP rights can be executed across the world. WIPO is also tasked with providing capacity building and technical assistance, which means including trainings or providing advice on IP strategies and legislation when it comes to issues related to enforcement. We also provide specific targeted trainings for different stakeholders, including sports lawyers, the prosecution, the police, or the judiciary on intellectual property issues and how to understand these laws. Finally, we also have the Advisory Committee on Enforcement, which is a formal body created at the organization with the objective to coordinate with the public and private organizations how to combat counterfeiting and piracy across the world, as well as share different information on how countries are doing it and what can be done in other countries similarly. When speaking about intellectual property in sports, one has to also remember about the possibility of using alternative dispute resolution services. So instead of going to court and going through very costly and time-consuming procedures, sometimes it might be much more easier to use these alternative dispute resolution services, including the Arbitration and Mediation Center, the WIPO Arbitration Mediation Center. It's a neutral, international, and non-profit dispute resolution provider where including sports companies and teams can use the different procedures such as mediation, arbitration, or expedited arbitration and expert determination. Why would you use these procedures? Well, first of all, because the costs are much more lower than if deciding to go to court. The time is much more shorter than deciding to go to court. The enforceability is across the world. There are quality outcomes, and there's the neutral forum, as well as the confidentiality is very closely kept. When speaking about intellectual property and sports, there are, of course, many other issues I can mention. Just to say a few, first of all, of course, there's the image rights, which you will hear about later on today. These are the rights to one's own image and the ability to determine whom, when, and how that image can use. This, of course, includes especially the athletes and their teams. There's, of course, the trade secrets, the know-how. One of the features of the patent system is that once you register an invention in the patent system, you disclose that invention to the world. It's publicly available. So sometimes some companies, some teams would decide not to disclose that information to their competitors. This is especially relevant in such sports as Formula One, where technologies are one of the key issues of how they perform. Also, you will also find esports, which of course it has its controversies, but at the same time the International Olympic Committee declared that it could be considered as a sport. And this, of course, creates many, many questions related to intellectual property. First of all, because computer programs themselves are already protected by IP rights, so then you would have to add the layer of a performance and many other layers when it comes to intellectual property. The global sports ecosystem is made of a complex web of players and commercial relations, which is underpinned in the end by IP rights. WIPO can and does provide assistance and help on these matters, whether through the international services such as the Patent Cooperation Treaty or the Hague Agreement, or eventually also the Arbitration Mediation Center. as well as we facilitate within the confines of our organization the negotiations of new international treaties, such as the new broadcasting treaty. Perhaps still going back, like this Rubik's Cube, we try to make all the elements of the IP system fit in order to stimulate innovation and creativity that will in turn stimulate economic, social, and cultural development. I highly encourage you also to have a look on our website, to also have a look on the different topics that we have also identified and explained on IP and sports. I highly encourage you to have a look at our services. And of course, should you have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly. But let me end with a quote from our Director General. Intellectual property underpins the many commercial relationships that exist in the world of sport and offers enormous potential as a driver for economic development. Thank you to all of those involved in this very big game, and happy Intellectual Property Day.
Tagad, kad mēs esam dzirdējuši no Freleka kunga, no Pasaules intelektuālā īpašuma organizācijas perspektīvu gan par sporta vērtību kā tādu, gan par veidiem, kā to aizsargāt, un, protams, arī neizbēgamo pārkāpumu sadaļu, varbūt jau kādam ir radies pirmie jautājumi par kādu no runātāju minētajām tēmām. Jā, lūdzu, mēs varētu palūgt mikrofonu tūlīt mums nāks. Mikrofons jau gandrīz jau lido, ne pēc pēdējiem normatīviem nenāk, viņš tik ātri kā vajadzētu, bet tūlīt būs klāt.
Mr. Freleks, question regarding IPO rights and the urge to promote different sports. You might remember the last case in beach volleyball. Players established their own union federation in order to have more TV coverage in lower level events, because they say only broadcaster that is showing those lower, like 1-star, 2-star events is betting industry, not the federation itself. How do you comment that in many cases only the betting industry is covering and giving the possibility for the viewers, for the audiences, to have a glimpse of what is really happening during those sports events, and how that correlates with the IPO rights?
It is not an easy question, definitely. It's a very good question, I have to agree fully. Perhaps what I can do is I can revert to you about this when I will consult with my colleagues from the copyright sector, which will have a much more precise reply to you, because my colleagues are directly involved also in the negotiations of this new broadcasting treaty, and they are specialized in that area. And since this is not an easy question, I would prefer not to reply to you directly at this moment. But I promise you that in the break, I'll give you a call to one of my colleagues, and you'll have the reply.
Paldies. Varbūt vēl kādam ir kāds jautājums?
And I won't be replying to all the questions that way, so.
Tad es saprotu, ka mēs varam pagaidīt līdz kafijas pauzei un tad atrast Freleka kungu un uzdot viņam jautājumus arī tajā mirklī. Un tagad teiksim lielu paldies vēlreiz Freleka kungam.